sanga yo kaende la ye guen ye do ga ne rai ga sho sa bon de jo ze ze che ye ya bo gui ye lo san zha se dan che bo ne de she so so de ye na ga se de be de de che zhe la ma ye be zong ga ta lo de be se na xian zhou du de yang ba ye zhi ge ya shu so so xie jie quan gu jia ye lu zhi du de yang san na wei tian yu le xie song cha be be ye la me ze be ku to de jian be de yan de la cha se ye wo che ye na zo me do che xian do be na se che zha so wo ye shan ye de che ye de ya zo ye de se ye na xian zhou che ye la che ba ye be kan xian tong me de ye ne sa ba yi le ye nga yi ji mi ge ji chi ba che ye ba la yang dong yang ba so ye me de chou ni ne ye ba cha be so so sha ni me de de ma de ro la che ye ba be da zhou de ye che wo yang bo che ye la ye zhe ba ye la ta ye zha ye san ba ta ye be ye ra ye ngo che zhe la ye ma ta ye ma che na ma che gu ka ye la che yan zhe jian che ye ne che yan da la yan san be de yan jie se ma ya la Nama yanda vise ye le shen ma yi so jo ko la cha yang do mi ma ya ta me na mo so go ra ba dan sin de ma do me ya no en de ma shu da so che ni san be ke wa de dan ro wa ge ya la kan pe ya da che ya ba la che ze lo ya san ya cha ba so jo yedang guru rana mandela vani yanda yami
sanje shada
soje chonam la janjo bando da
dagi shishi jive sanje beje sanje jowara sanje shada
soje chonam la janjo bando dani kyabzo she dagi shujun jive chonam lola benje sanje joba sho soje chonam la janjo bando dani kyabzo she dagi shujun jive lola benje sanje joba
sho simshe tamye tom topsalla nama yanda bu dobe sanje umar bu shine tava shati jede tabe şu sene bu konu şansı çemasın sedan samayız.
Let us take a moment to cultivate bodhicitta motivation, seeking Buddhahood, complete enlightenment for the sake of benefiting all other sentient beings. And with that kind of at least contrived bodhicitta motivation, we should all participate in this discourse.
Dadi şudum dedi ki, lince kurdu. Tenjo doğuma ve şibak obasaydı maşyarız.
Where we left off in this commentary on the wisdom chapter of Bodhisattva Mahasattva Shantideva from his guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life. Those of you who have this English translation, we are on page 183 and subpoint 2. Caption reads, "Our unique way of positing the entity of disintegration." And so the Tibetan word is shikpa, translated as disintegration here. And according to Prasangikas, that disintegration or disintegratedness, perhaps, is an entity or ngöbo.
Yibasam, tambo hiba ngöbo longu jwani. Deno namne, tenje tamakas. Kye genji gashi she sonda. Tela gashi ne kanshi ve simje ti hiba la shagoshi. Ti rangjule kye genji kye somba. Dine hiba la joya ba tenji. Sarjeba le ya shiwa chawani so nyawa newa o. Shiwe nguso shiwa kye da. Shive marikpa kebe che marikpa kebe shoshi da rang shingi dribu kene sho kanyi ba tene ngobar de goso pi chirchashi le ngoda ngami dishi yi shi nyukutabu ngobata Yukutabu ngobata, yuku ngoba bebe, yuku shibatabu, nika dishe ma songla. Shima yide, yuku ngobatabu, kenyi dishe be, sherde, yuku shibati, yuku ngobale, ten shongi sheros. Teta shiba ngobosu, tenyo wachita, rangye me shede, rangde hibasati dimashi sigo goba sigo marata tenjo tumo mai hiba goba jomsa hibasati khoje pamajo shawa mene shiwa da sigro ti pama shawa da tongba pama sha ji kaka ya mari me shiwa shira de sino ko shia da pama de shawa de jolden ko sha yin jolden ko shara da shia yin da de ko jiyoris, jiyoza, enişte ko pumba şivasadi, pumba mevası şaşıgov şekmaris. Ko işte sonra del gölden şu ayınza, indi ko jiyi ceva insan o şaşıgoris. 시범고 하고 주제 가려서는 그 주제적 때는 매우 송하여서 이거 시작했어. 어디서 보자.
So this is Prasangika's exclusive of unique assertion that Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness, is an entity or mobile. So on page 183, now it is presented or discussed under three interrelated sub-points. First one is establishing the entity of disintegration based upon scriptural authority or scriptures. And the second one is establishing the entity of disintegration through logic or reasoning. And then the third one is establishing the same thing through what is acknowledged in the world. So now we are dealing with the first sub-point, establishing the entity of disintegration through scriptures. So as Geshe explained, that when we think about aging and death, right, it is caused by birth. If we are born, right, so that because we are born, so that will cause us aging and death. And so when we die, right, we become non-existent, right? We have disintegrated, or we have completely become non-existent. And so that disintegratedness, according to Prasangika, is an entity. According to Savatandika, Madhyamika, other schools, right, disintegratedness is a non-produced phenomenon or unproduced phenomenon, okay, with Dumache. Okay. Whereas Prasangika says that it is a product, produced phenomenon, it is an entity. Why? Because it's caused by something else, right? There's a cause and effect relationship here. So that's so the examples Geshe are given is like when we think in terms of a vase, a pot. When a pot breaks, right? So that's a disintegration of a pot. So it's not just the breaking of the pot, but there is a part of it, right, that why it breaks or it has disintegrated, that part is caused by something else. And so that's what we're talking about. Shikpa is not just the what called the absence or the non-existence of the vase when it's destroyed, but there's a part of it why in the first place it can be disintegrated, destroyed. So that part is caused by something. So the same thing for human beings, right? When we die, of course, we become non-existent. But why we have to die? In other words, right? The death is caused by right birth, and so they talk about disintegratedness in terms of that, not just simply becoming non-existent there.
뭐 this 희과사죠. 그래서 본반으로 다 강반을 놓아버리나. 그 지도에서 강반 기획서는 강반 거 힘을 받을 때는 뒤 슈도 가가 돼야 말아. 뭐 가르쳐서 시사 되는 것도 말이 가르쳐. 근데 다동시에 먹어서 그 희야 주시에서 되게 되게 다 대주에는 에 다동시에 니 먹어서니 되게 되게 있어. 런지 번세되는 그 다동시에 니 거에서 근데 강반도 놓아버리는 가르치 놓아서도 희과도 가서 이 희과도 거기 겨울을 되게라 희과도 요 말아.
말아.
그 가면 왜 써야 돼? 내려서 내야지야 말아. 이나 그 희야도 줄 되는 이 희배버려서 이는 거 버리스다. 다시야 줄 뭐지? 야 가래 거기 가면 시방 거 보이는데 가발에 생이도 가래 들었잖아. 제가 말이지. 되죠서 랑기베는 제가 니에도 가라도 디마치 니에 거로. 나 랑주바 menje ke se ni de da khangba shikwa ko me ba chakwa khangba me ba di duma chi so ro ba na khangba shikwa na eni khangba shikjo le khar de sara dor bu sara dor de shiba marwa seda shiba se da don se ni se ni ya se yo marwa da de tinju ba da ha ko ske ne seda ni ya me da ni shiba ngo ba sha bu so cha ro da de ta tejo de ko da This doesn't say near me now. Couldn't Gyeltsen Shiva, could be ever tried to Gyeltsen. Ningba the combat, Ningba the Shiva to because you Gyeltsen Shiva is any Shiva to go outside or his station.
Okay. I'll translate what I understood. I was asking Geshe something else, but he's repeating, so I better not create unnecessary things here. So translate dutifully what he said. So according to Prasangika's exclusive or unique assertion is that Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness, as we talk about, it is an entity because its entity is caused by something, right? And why they come to that conclusion is according to Prasangika's, all phenomena are merely designated, right? If you don't analyze it anything, so everything is merely designated and they do exist, they function just fine. But if you're going to prop into something, what is that disintegratedness, right? It's something to be findable. They said nothing is findable, because findability is tested by ultimate analysis, right? Could we find anything under ultimate analysis? According to Prasangika's, nothing is findable under ultimate analysis. That's their standpoint, isn't it? So the same thing, you cannot find the disintegratedness under the ultimate analysis. There's nothing to be said here. But the fact is that there is a disintegratedness or disintegration, isn't it? If a house collapses, it has disintegrated. So how did the house collapse? Well, there's a cause, reason why it collapsed. Right? But if you look in immanence, when the house is collapsed, nothing is left, right? You cannot say, well, here are the pieces of the houses. Well, that's not a house, So nothing is to be found. Whereas according to Sevatantrika Madhyamikans and other Buddhist schools of thought, for them, right, things are designated, not merely designated, but they have to be findable, right? If you say like something exists, right, under ultimate analysis, something has to be found, So they said if disintegration, they said you couldn't find it under the ultimate analysis, so it cannot be an entity, otherwise it has to be findable under that. And Prasangika say, we don't have that problem, because our assertion is things are merely designated and nothing is findable under ultimate analysis. So those are the distinctions there.
What is that Shiva over in the Judea or the Gyeltsen Shiva in things? That Judea Digman or Tea. That the Karsa Sajabali Misari. Shiva the Shiva Shani Shuni. You are never so. Shiva is more Shiva Jevata. Shiva Shimi Mariba Jevi. Shashidang Rani, the beginning be, Shui Konibetini, Mubo Duogoso, tea, Sahile, what a woman, the she, you could have moved out. You could move on, baby, you could ship out, you can deceive but Sungla. Shima by. Shima ten joy, Corsa. Shima mean the you could over the was you generally do she said you shibati, you over la ten joy sheros. You mena, you shibana. What is was a cause?
No, so.
So you would then go shiba, you shibas on the Congo race.
No,
Or the Shibago race. Or did that did you? She was said, thousands of go on Shen. She then she will go shot, thousands and she will go shot to woman or did change her.
So the main reason why Prasangika said that disintegration or disintegratedness, Shikpa, is an entity, ngobo means functional entity, because it's caused by something. It has a cause. Anything caused by something has to be an entity, right? That's what it's saying. And so they cite, among many other texts here, fundamental stanzas of the middle way, and which states that entities and non-entities are conditioned phenomena, right? So they give you this example of a sprout, and so the the disintegration of a sprout is dependent on the sprout, right? If there is no sprout, we can't now talk about the disintegratedness or the disintegration of a sprout. So that disintegratedness is dependent upon the sprout itself. And the sprout is caused by its own cause, right? And so this is the example Pasangyaka gives to kind of illustrate their point.
제가 해야 돼. 해야 돼. 전이 지고리 그래서 세도 시에 무슨 희와 제바다 신이 시에 제와 심에 말이고 시에 샤와시 지니스 송바디 시바라 지우여 때도 되나 러니 주제바 위신 자시에 모두 몸이 디시스 모두서는 대답해도 범바다도 뭐버지 뭐면서는 범바시 받으러 그래서 범바시 받냐가 뭐뭐 있어 다가 있어야 돼.
So basically, Geshe reread the statement from the sutra on the 10th ground, and then so according to the Pasangikas, both entities. So what's the difference between an entity, ngobo, and ngome, a non-entity, if you will? So a sprout is, an entity, and destruction of a sprout or destructiveness of a sprout is a non-entity. But both are conditioned phenomena, according to them. So another example Geshe has given is a pot. A vase is an entity. And the complete destruction of a vase, it is a non-entity of a pot. It is, right? So that's how they differentiate between what is called an ngöbo, an entity, and ngöme, non-entity.
This is what Tena Rani Nugu Java Chivish Rashi Cosa Nugu Mubata Jujin Judicial Nugu Shivati Nugu Mobile 10 Jewish heroes. But they call Nugu men Nugu Shira Yomaro. So the Nugu Shivati Nugu Desmond Shibago the Reto the Regress. Oh, the 어디 시방고에 주제를 그 주의제가 성사 디레스티리 단지바 리베 줘바네 저 란데 신시 여데바 타기 누랑고 나만 롱들레 뒤니바 미데베 지바는 오보테다 디 주니를 제 랑줄레 셰메 시 시중의 주시를 메데바 제진 계신 이발의 시관이 의미이베 이베 주데메드 대다 시관아 하세 주데메드 마 고바니 색색에 지바 기메데 켈랑네 주시 계신만이도 마와 티 시다나 주메베 지바미비시 뭐보나 계시 마 니당 지바다 채와나 주신이도 저걸 가는 줄 티스 뜻하지 민지바이든 줄 희소 송세 니는 심지에 깨와도 희와 니당 뭐보 뒤니벌 지바도 뭐보 뒤니벌 희발라스 나나 뭐본 조문저당 런지 제미지 고수셔니 내가 또데 누구께서 이발 마데발라 주면은 누구께서 이발 마데발라 이베고바 계시마 메바 졸라 대단한 누구 드시소 영은 주시가 드시 계시마 마와 메더지 세베 도노스 대담 식바단 지과사데 계신가시 계산을 해 그거지 말이시다 예리고 거시시파 가버 줘들이 지과스 다들 그 매서 손들 식과스 Geshe Gyeltsen Shan the him with Unidos Shigba. Overcause Tambo Gyeltsen drop, and then we was on the she was a Sigwaris. She the Kotia, you don't want to wear the Guyans, Quiver Judra, the Juatis. Could Carson Judra, Taran, he went good Carson, Jiva Karan, Hivaris, which is the Hivan over this. That she was the Yugi, he was the dark Carres da. Saying it about new Marasena. Was the same thousands and new Maris over that. Because you could Gyeltsen and Guy, Shiva is a Tara over to where my quite thousands and saying there is a new guy, Maris. Oh, this was it.
So Geshe read the second sub-point that's establishing the entity of disintegration through reasoning at the bottom of page 183 and so up to the middle of paragraph on page 184. So the first sub-point is establishing the entity of disintegration based upon scriptural authority. That's what we looked at, right? According to Prasangika's that Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness, is an entity because it has a cause. It's caused by something, and so once, let's say a sprout is an entity, then when it's disintegrated, that disintegratedness is a non-entity of the sprout, right? It's not a sprout anymore, but it's also still an entity. Both are conditioned phenomena. And so the second point is, dealing with how we deal with the same assertion through reasoning. So here, there's mention of two terms. The Tibetan word Shikpa is disintegration or disintegratedness, and Jikpa is here translated as decay. Okay. Normally, we interchangeably use everything. We said disintegration, destruction, momentary changes. We use all of them as this is my footnote, okay, meaning the same thing. But now here, like in some Buddhist schools, seems like they are making a distinction between these two terms, right? Shikpa is disintegration, and Jikpa is a decaying, right? Decay. Yeah. Yes, sense of impermanence, right? Oh no, not necessarily. Yeah. Not necessarily, right? Yeah, decay. We're just only using the word jikpa. Sometimes I even use the word jikpa is as a destruction, right? The Tibetan term jikpa has that sense, Now, of course, when we say impermanent, right? That's my footnote. Right? No, I'm not mixing with this. Yes, we always think in terms of subtle impermanence, right? That's our presentation. But the term itself doesn't necessarily say that, connotate that. Yeah. So anyway, so Geshe-la's explanation given here is, of course, from Prasangika's standpoint. So they're saying that both terms actually mean the same thing. Whether we talk about Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness, or Jikpa, translated here as decay, right? It's a different terms, but they are more like a synonyms, meaning the same thing. And the distinction that made according to Geshe's explanation is when we think in terms of Jikpa, Jikpa is like it is decaying. It is like not yet completely disintegrated. It is more like a process, I think, right? Whereas the disintegration is like that maybe process is complete, right? Disintegratedness. But both imply impermanence, right? So both meaning the same thing here. And so according to Prasangika's that, if you ask us, like, okay, you said that disintegratedness is an entity, so what is it actually? Kind of like, show me. They said, well, you can't show anything under ultimate analysis, right? And that's your standpoint, meaning those who assert that something has to be findable under ultimate analysis. We don't agree with that, right? We are saying that it is a fact. There's something called disintegration or disintegratedness, isn't it? And so that disintegratedness is caused by something. So therefore, anything caused by something, we call that an entity, right? That's our standpoint. But if you say, just pinpoint it, they said, we just go by convention. You cannot find anything under ultimate analysis, right? So that's the part of their reasoning here.
Nipa rikpa dropa nese, tenha rangshi, tenha rangde shikji, gya deva thaki, lola ngobo nama rang dropa tuyule, tuy nipa medebe, jikpa ni ngobo teta, ngobo di, yunyele ke rangile, shenbi shishunke, yu shenla medeba, dejim. Geshe nyepare shikwane ngome yinbe, yu teme du do, tetare shikwa yu teme du maa goba ne, sikse le, jikwa jime du khela ne, dushe geshe maa nye du maa ne, maa tetare na nyugu mebe, mana yu mebe, jikwa mebe shere, ngoba na geshe ba yedang, jikwa da jibuta, geshe jikwa da chewa nang, dushe nye du chewa kala jiru. Tese tutam menjiba yedin joro, hezo songse, dina simje jewa da hiwa yedang, ngobo tuy nyeban jikwa da, ngobo tuy nyeban hikwa nang da hasi. Ngobo njo me do tang, rangile jeme ji gozung shen nyeba tang de, yu kechik nyebara madhe bara la jume na, yu kechik nyebara medhe bara yang, jume goba, kechik ma mewa jola, tetana nyugu dushe soyang, menjur jing, menjur jing. Dushe kechik ma medhe che, pe tono os. Ote da kaji nyugu shiba ngoba maya na, ene shiba ngoba maya na, jiba ngoba maya shakarisi. Jiba ngoba maya na, ene ka dushe maya takarisi. Ote si kota, tiso na, ene shiba ngoba droga karisi, na koi jiba ngoba raba, jiba ngoba teta, rode kaka khele karwa. Ote si khele karwa, tata jiba da shiba saadi, ngaji chiribiri, tonda koto shiba droga rwa. Chigla kora jiba gugo choba pa, jiba juwa ham tireshi, chigdi shik tsangel siwa rwa. Ote shen shesiya marwa.
So Geshe read the remaining part on page 184, and so Prasangikas are, saying that, Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness, and Jikpa, decaying, let's say here, they mean the same thing. It's just a matter of, different moments, isn't it? Decaying, refers to the process of, decaying. It's more like, whereas the disintegration is the second moment. The things have already disintegrated, right? And so everybody accepts in the Buddhist schools of thought that jikpa or decaying is impermanent, right? So anything that's impermanent, it cannot stay as it is in the second moment, right? Because there's a cause why things couldn't stay as it is in its second moment, right? They do disintegrate. The first moment disintegrates, isn't it? So disintegratedness or disintegration is the later moment, right? The kind of outcome, whereas decaying or jikpa is the prior moment, right, leading to that. Why things are that? Because that in the very nature, right? Impermanent things in the very nature, right? They undergo changes and then they get destroyed at the end,
Gobane, Persa, to the Shikbala, you dame the Mo Gobane, 6 days, Jigwa Jimmy the Kelane, and the Jigajima need more Titan, you may be Jiba, Gobana, Gajima need to Jiba the Chavana, the Jini, Jova Halanger. Teacher the Taji, Mijuba Joro, Sheso songs. Te da any 시방고마는 지방고마에 티는 고마사 샤토고 말아.
No, so.
그지 고마면 다 있는 규제계절은 것이 롱도르 계절을 강가 매래로 걸어다.
No, so.
어디로.
So basically, the Prasangikas are telling, let's say, other Buddhist schools of thought here, that you accept that jigpa, decaying as impermanent, isn't it? It's an entity, you know? And so the disintegration should be accepted as an entity because they are just the same meaning as referred to different moments of the same thing, right? We think in terms of continuity of thing, it has many moments. The prior moments are in the process of decaying something, and the disintegration is the later moment, you know? And so therefore, it has happened with... the final moment. The final moment, yes, yeah. The final moment, right, when something completely destroyed, right? So you should be accepting that itself as an entity as well, right? How can you accept decaying as impermanent entity and not the final disintegration or the moment as an entity?
What the jigba jimekela the Chajita take Marciaji. The time then the Sija, the Shionida. Go to Niba Jiba, go to Niba Higba. No, la. No job, Ranji Jemiji, Gozushi, and go never done day. You get Nipper Madeba, Jimena, you get Nipper Medeba. You may go get you, my Meva Jola, you go to young interruption. Do she get you, Mamma, I meditate at one of us? Or did it say that? Kissing Nibala, Midova said that Madeva says Yorova. So Midova said, Jiba Joa, Tata Yuva Gazara. The Madeva said Jixara. The Gazing was so that usual Rova. Said that I kiss him until Midova tell Jana. Bear song as the Geo is. Midova, they call bear song as the Madeva Sigara.
So I think it's a matter of what we call the use the terminologies, terms here, right? That when we think in terms of any entity, right, it could not, say as it is in its second moment, right? Things do change, isn't it? So one is looking more at the process of it. It's in the process of change, disintegrating, but then when the second moment arises, it has already disintegrated, isn't it? And so why do you say that the process of disintegration or what that is an entity, but not the disintegratedness itself, right? So that's what the Prasangikas are telling them, because both are caused by something, right? Both have causes, Anything caused by something is an entity by definition, right? That's what we're saying.
What is then the show you could see what you gave that you could see what you could see you gave them. You could don't think about me about the Juva that you to road to think about Madeba Juva then. You could see what you could say. You could go Gane, maybe go yeah. Good la then massive over ambitious. Go ambitious. Over jogos. The Jewish was at you will do the call, go shots at me. Kona, you will see what Kona go salads and could you go in the could go another day or you go to Marava. Could you go over? That you got the call. You go over my side, the call over my side of Marava. What is it?
So Geshe read once more that I think some sort of instrumental paragraph towards the end of page 184. I'll read the whole thing and then translate what he said. An implication here is that as the decay of a sprout is produced from a cause, the disintegration of a sprout is also produced by a cause. Also, as there is a cause for the same sprout not to remain for a second instant, there is a cause for the sprout to have not remained for a second instant. The disintegration of the sprout in relation to the sprout is a non-entity, that is the absence of the sprout that has ceased. Nevertheless, in relation to its essence, it is an entity that has not disintegrated, so it is posited as an entity, and so forth. So Geshe-la's explanation given is that when we think of a sprout as a case in point example, a sprout is an entity, right? All schools accept that. It is an entity brought by a cause. Right? When that sprout disintegrates completely, right? So that disintegration, disintegratedness, right? Shikpa in Tibetan. So because sprout has become a non-sprout, right? From that point of view, it's called non-entity. But it does not mean that the disintegration of the sprout has become what we call a non-functional thing. It's still an entity, right? It's called non-entity in relation to the sprout because sprout is the entity, and the disintegration of the sprout is the absence of the destruction of the sprout. That's non-entity. But in its very nature, that non-entityness, okay, let's change the English language here, right? It's still an entity, right? It's caused by, right, its causes. That's what the Prasangicas are saying. Yes.
Di shola se nyugu shikba ju jeba ta nyugu shikba ju jeba ta nyugu rangdu tuni ba medeba ju jeba ta nyugu tu rangdu nyeba madeba la ju jeba ta la nyugu shikba di nyugu la tene nyugu ngobo gakba ga me ngobo yin rang ngobo la tene Mashikbai ngobo yimbishir. Mashikbai ngobo yimbishir. Ngobo jogo. Tiye sikse le jikbai shi de shikba ten jikba shi shebe so. Jikba chujiba le yuze nyele shiwa ni. Se shiwa mikba te she nomda nyingba seba mame she gyur songba de jang debe jude ten la te chen dreba la mamobe ken mebe ne mege gyur na che de ken meba ma gyur na na dome sawa jawa gyuro Tetawana Miguel Junior Lamba, you know, she gave a momban over dende. Tell her Junior about them be Sheros Marseves, Mame Shiva gave her somebody Junior she but over Judea. Geshe ma thangpa da tu nyepa me de pa yang te zang zhao was. O te sa da mame shiwa sa da dungu da nom sebe jiburi sa o ka yun shikpa res. Da geshe shik sa da ya yun shikpa wa geshe shikpa kakari shena shikya kanga yun shikpa re. Kuni nga Geshe shikpa te a jikpa re dori, Geshe shikpa te a jikpa re dori, shikpa inpa shikpa ra.
So Geshe read the sentence at the bottom of page 184 and top of 185, which is a citation from commentary to the 60 regions there. And so the explanation given is, if we think of another example here, a butter lamp, Tibetan, right? So when a butter is consumed by the lamp, so that what called the cessation of the butter oil is the cause of the butter lamp becoming extinct, isn't it? Right? But in that case, we are thinking in terms of the continuity disintegration, isn't it? If the butter is not exhausted, right, there will be the continuity of the butter light, isn't it? But because the butter is consumed, so therefore the continuity of the butter lamp or the butter light is now has ceased, isn't it? So that is a cessation of a continuity or disintegration continuity. But the early examples we talked about is more in terms of momentary disintegrations, isn't it? But for Prasangikas, it doesn't matter whether it is a momentary disintegration, something that could not exist as it is in the second moment of existence, and the disintegration continuity, they both are impermanent, right? So the same rule applies. They both are caused by, right? The destruction of the continuity is caused by something, and the disintegration of a moment to moment is caused by something. So from that point of view, they are just the same, right? According to Prasangikas.
Suma jide yi chakbe shiva gobo drobane, rigpa tujiba drevar se shimewe ngaye dru mangruwa she jor shiso sum batar jigde na shimewe ngaye dre jen so semewe ngaye pishi shio she ngama mewe shima lakwa shaa so tiya shuda se sewa se ma se ba dre likpa dan putso jor de goba Shantideva sevaya tenam seve jurdu rigbela keva medo steri jigde changzu juyashina teres ben shava mata tala tondo shuma so shava mata sa joro
No.
anta na she be ye put be dori hizo se mara ni hizo se jo the zan se ye ko choyong a shida
No.
ko ti se puso gyima da ti maoba de ganga jide ganga chiba chaya sida jide chazo khora sida shiba gobo regu resu.
No. So now we're on page 185 and looking at this subpoint number 3, which reads, establishing the entity of disintegration through what is acknowledged in the world. So what the world talks about, right? What's known in the world. And so the number of examples given, and according to Geshe-la's explanation, right, the farmers will say that, well, there has been, no rainfall enough, so all our crops died, isn't it? So the lack of rainfall is the cause of the not having a crop, right? And there is a destruction they talk about, right? Due to not having enough rain, so they don't have a harvest this year, right? Or somebody might say, we are so poor and we are starved to death. So due to starvation, my son died, isn't it? And if we have enough food, my son would have survived. So the food is a cause for the survival, but the lack of food or the starvation is a cause of the death, isn't it? So even in the world, people talk about what, right? The outcome, the death is a disintegration, or not having a crop is a disintegration, is caused by something, whether lack of rain or you don't have enough food to eat, right? And so there's, even in the world, people accept this. That's what the Prasangikas are telling them.
That there jide chazo se da the push se me push wada and shumen and shing yes the ribek rilum ja tere kamera sidan ko jide mata maseba gaga yos sa di ko thonda ju ro di ko de ro ti is ko.
So this third subpoint is basically looking at the commonly accepted examples in the world. We are really not talking about logic or reasoning or analysis here, right? How the world people talk about, right? And everybody says that, something happened, because of that this happened, isn't it? We are so poor, we don't have enough food, so we have death in the family, right? There is not enough water, we have no irrigation system, so our crops failed. So people in the world have this commonly accepted things that something is causing the destruction of something else. So there is, right, disintegration is the final destruction, whatever, is caused by number of causes.
도심다 런지바다 로라 미레데 드라가 로라 누구 식제베 또 누구 샤시 제응오바 탐제니 로라 텔레시 품바소 이거보 그냥 마드베세 맹가 데스 맹가 티니라 데베 디고 메바데도 티니 슈디 당동 리베제니 조고베 네이라 라레제 마주 명상지 고네스 유데타지 조베 로데라 시봉고 조보 신드 테데 누구 시보 누구 고보를 조방 시중고보다 테다 지 르드베 고보 가야 누구 시베 센실 르베 제 티고 조바 마이지 시중고보라 사테네 제베스 민자다요 장데스 삼테스 고보 조바 이노스 어제 다도서 이거 말고 누구 식스도다 가리 누구 식바다 가리에서 제도 제는 거 니야요 말고 요 말아 누구 매서 사마도 티슈 항마저 가게 레야 말아 레야 말데 이나 거 식바디 줄때는 식이사 어디 뭐 인사 지된데 인사다.
So as we said this before, when Geshe said again, that according to Prasangika's exclusive assertion or standpoint, with regard to Shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness of anything is an entity, right? Because it's caused by something. That's the only reason they have. Something caused by something is what we call ngöbo, entity, isn't it? Whether it's a decay, the process of disintegration, or the disintegration, which is the outcome, right? They are caused by something, and we don't assert that something has to be findable until ultimate analysis, right? We said that's how it is explained. But if you tell me what is disintegrated there, show it to me, pinpoint it. They said like until ultimate analysis, that is findable. That's our standpoint, right? Yeah.
What is it called? He be saying you 마이제 시중고볼 때 제베 민자다요자 고볼 줘봐이 노치시 근데 시봉고볼 줘봐 타니들아 제미 제바 토고스 어디 토서 다 시봉고볼 줘야 돼 가서 저기 맞아 켈라나 이 시봉고볼 줘 토고스 다선데 니고 말아
맞네.
다 다선데 랑지 저 켈라는 다선데 니고 예자네 시봉고볼 줘면서 되거라 어디 제와도 뒤죽도
Nice. And so Geshe read to more like the bottom part of what's on page 185. So why Prasangikas are comfortable, if you could say that way, asserting that in their unique position, that disintegration or disintegratedness, Shikpa, is an entity, unlike other Buddhist schools of thought, Sevatantric Madhyamikans, because for them, all things nominally exist. Things are merely designated, right? And they function as such. But nothing has to be findable, and nothing could be found under ultimate analysis, right? That's why they're very comfortable saying that disintegration is caused by something else, and we call it's an entity. You know, with me? But in other Buddhist schools of thought, where they accept there has to be intrinsic existence, something has to exist in and of itself, so they feel very uncomfortable saying that disintegration is an entity, because for them something has to be findable, right? So when something is destroyed, nothing is findable, right? Like the example we gave before, when a house collapses, well, there is no house anymore. You cannot pick the pieces like, hey, here are the houses, like those are not houses, really. So because nothing is findable, so therefore they couldn't accept the same thing, that disintegration is an entity, right?
어디 다 희과사도 뭐든지 가르치나 희과는 뭐뭐 가자 제좀 제네 어네 가자 제네 또 거봐 가봐인라 대 희규 대 제정지 맹가 맹지 Tite Sungobo Shiba Pangbish, Mainga in no Shibangobo Shabadam, tell a Juyava Shiba Nugobo Shabadam, tell a Juyava Demada, Jawara. Tazon Zene, Jom Guso, Shibangobo so le Shiba so le Shiba Tarzashi, Gyeltsen so le Sewa Namos. What did that Shibangobo Digo Shibju given to head Tago Nene, Jeremy Zahi those, what the attack is using.
Shiba the Mainga Yelagore. Tinjuba Shiba the Mega Mare Mainga Delagore.
Oh, this way.
Mainga Letical any Casa Gago shoot the carton to go again.
La sure do you about the
Shiba the Jewish of things. So Geshe read the bottom of page 185, which I'll read and then translate. Disintegration, now they're defining it, the Shikpa, disintegratedness is a negation because it must be conceived through the explicit exclusion of an object of negation, right? It is a negative phenomenon reality, right, that can be posited by excluding what needs to be excluded, negated, right? That's the definition. And so according to Prasangikas, that what kind of negative reality it is, right? Usually we use the term affirmative negative or non-affirmative negative, right? They use the word here, implicative negative, non-implicative, it comes to the same thing, right? I just want to point out that. And so according to Prasangika Madhyamikas, it is not non-implicative negative. It's not a affirming negative phenomenon. It is an affirming negative phenomenon. It is an implicative negative phenomenon according to this translation. Yeah. So what is implicated, I checked with the Geshe, right, because it has to implicate something, is that this integration has a cause. It was caused by something. So that's the implication. Okay? Yeah.
What did that Garza? Shibago, the Gorda, Shibago, Yabushin, and it's actually Gyeltsen sauce. It was a Gyeltsen, Omagomara is not you. And Jeremy songs to the Shushan and Haku Resurta.
So here the author recommends that if you would like to know really more about this whole state of affairs, shall we call it, of the disintegration or disintegratedness, this kind of a brain twisting concept. Geshe didn't say that, my footnote. Then he suggests that we read Lama Tsongkhapa's great commentary called Gyeltsen on the fundamental verses of the middle way. In other words, the wisdom treatise, right? Fundamental wisdom treatise, and we'll find illustration there. Yes.
Ngobor Shewe Gyeltsen Ji, Tuso Yujoduya, Tu Maiba, or Jomos, Tida Karsa, Chivago Shetan Demo, Tanda Ranju Mesi and Demo to Tawashi, Tata Tuson, the Tata to but the Deva the Momo said, and the Tawashi that did that. And
so we are on top of page 186, and now we're going to look at subpoint 3, which is captioned as our unique way of positing the three terms. Our meaning, Prasangikas are telling, we have also an exclusive or unique standpoint when it comes to presenting the three times here. And so it starts off with, we assert that disintegration, Shikpa or disintegratedness, and future, which is the time, both as entities. Whereas in other Buddhist schools of thought, like Savatandika, Madhyamika, and below, so for them, past and future are permanent realities, not entities. Past and future are permanent reality, whereas according to Prasangikas, future is an entity, just as the disintegratedness is an entity.
어디 다들 중앙에 제가 망가 봐고 다들 중앙에 다들 미비실 주인지 다 두손다 다다세도 유행하면 되라 어디 주인시거든 내 뭐서 대바사 대사로 뭐보다 중교로 제가 다다세도 다다 뒤다가는 요에서 두손다 주인시 어디지 내가 다들 중앙 뭐보다 gyātāki māṅbātā dēvē tūyīṃ nāmbā chōpa tsū māyī nō xie sōpa tār ngōpa xīng sīṃ bē shātī dēvē tsēnyī tā ngōpa xīng rāñī gyēshī jūyé jā gyē mā sāngē mā jīvē shātī māṅbā bē tsēnyī ngōpa xīng shīpa tā ngōpa māngabē shā kāñyā māyīshīṃ jēla māngāpa tē tādevē tsēngi tū rōpa sōngshīṃ nyūgu tabla tsōna nyūgu jēsīñi nyūgu tabla tsōna jēsīñi nyūgu jāngā jē māsāngē rīchī mācēpa tē nyūgu māngabā tūyatā nyūgu rāñi jēla māngāpa 누구 다다에 뒤서 세다 누구를 켜나 누구는 주사에 망가 마음버시 제가 망가는데 다다하셔 그랬어 어디 다 누구를 켜다 추가를 해지고 뒤서 뒤에 가가지고 누구로 와 네다 가지 제가 망가면 다다하셔 중앙 좋아한테 마음버시 대와라시 가스면 대와시 어디야
So Geshe read the first two, the citation from the 400 stanzas and the next paragraph there. Basically, here the Prasangikas are offering the definitions of past, present, and future of any entity, right? And so they gave an example of a sprout, nyugu, seedling. And so they said that the past of a sprout is when the sprout reaches its second instant of the moment, right? The first moment has already disintegrated. So that aspect of the sprout is its past. And the present, of the sprout is that it is still going on, has not yet ceased to exist, right? That's that moment which has arisen but is still, right, kind of alive, not ceased. And the future of the sprout is yet to come, right? There are other moments of the sprout yet to come, right? This is how they define, past, present, future of a sprout, and this could be applied to any, other examples, right? Any impermanent phenomenon has a past, present, future, right? That which has arisen, not yet ceased to exist, is the present, isn't it? That which has arisen and ceased to exist is the past. That which has not yet arisen is the future in general, right? That's what we are talking about, right?
What the demo you do then wrong thing about him doesn't done. Ronji without Lola Medete, tell you go shake Jebe. Tone you go shashi, you go over the Lola. Tell a ship of Basso, you go. kāyā mātā bē, mēngā tīngi rā dēbē, tēlā gōba tē mē bē, tē mē bā dē tō, tēne shū tē tāk tō rīk bē chē nē, tsē nē shō kō bē, nē jī yīn lā, rāng zē jī mā shō mēngzā jī kō nē jū rē tāng shē, shō wā tē lōng tē lā, nē, shīk bā gōba shō bā, shē tū tē tē, nyū kō shīk bā tā bē, gōba shō bā, rāng shīk jū gōba tāng, Tīrī tūmbē, ngōba kāyā nyūgu shīgbē tsēngi mē, tsēngi rīgbē tsēnē, tī ngōba rōba māyī jē. Shīgyū ngōba lā tēnē, jēbē, Minga tahu samdi, ngobo joba ino se. That Shiva go is there are that. Ko mea so Jews Shiva is a Tagara Shiva go shagar but tell Shiva kai Shiva's the Lord Shaya Maris. Says that they got out of them because I Tagara Jigoris.
Well, this point Gisela made already before, but anyway, said it again, so I'll translate. For Pasangikas, the big reason why disintegration or disintegratedness, shikpa, I always say the Tibetan word that's more stable because English can change any other time, I suppose, why is an entity is because it is caused, right? And that's the reason, right? Disintegratedness is an effect, right, caused by something. So therefore, we said it is an entity. We do not assert that something has to be findable, including disintegratedness under ultimate analysis.
Shiva guzo gaja chene to gobe. Gaba in the Shiva sajida and Gautam is Gaba race, cousin. Nobody bear so shall with all the Gaba race. Che dog gobe, it's a Gaba in la. Tea Higuti, Chesum Menka Menges, Teacher Gobo Shi Pangbe Shir. My guy knows the Hicks is the co. Shiva Corner go over Moridi. Call then because she had the Gilden co Shiva in the, but the co Gilden she was pang in the, and the co Shiva over Shato race, or this or that.
So I think this explanation pertains to things you find on page 187 there, where Prasangikas, they accept shikpa, disintegration or disintegratedness as a negative reality or phenomenon, menga in Tibetan, and for them it is not a non-implicative negative or non-affirming negative reality as other Buddhist schools of thought say. It is an implicative negative phenomenon or affirmative negative phenomenon. That's I have been translating for so many years. It's called Mainga in Tibetan. And so what is implicated, as we said before, is because that disintegration doesn't happen on its own. It was caused by something. So what's implicated, that it is an outcome of cause, right? That's what's implicated. Yes.
Oh, did it? Because he walked over in Ba, so he the river to Jiba somewhere. So in Davesh, you get in Java, so Shibara here there. So he did so now. Somebody did that. Shiba Mo, Shibata Mo, Bani, over Shibi. You think ye to Zujo to Maiba, Jones, or did that? Thank you, Lola. And then Rangi Messi, Demo over Shagara. So that 10 years old, two song over Shadow or the Shadow or this over. No was Kaza Jojo to my but now Jomo. Ten Shijab and Java said, tell her. Money tell the hijab and jabber, tell her, Mahoban Tada to the machine bow. Devani, Tinny and Deva, Tadashima, Mahoba, Givatagi, Mahoba, Deve, Tinny, number of the two ye. But when you hear about the over here, she seemed to be shy. They were saying that over here, she ran Geshe Gyeltsen, Gyeltsen, my give a shot. Mom saying, over here, she was a mom, but Shakaya, my Gyeltsen, Mankapati, Tade saying the job of song here. You could have a son. Chasing you could young, came as on a Rishi Majaba, the Yugu Mobi to them. You could run your Jalavanka, you could run to you so. Tenzin Deva the Mahumpa Zangji, Mahumpa Lokzongji, Minjobar. Chungsin Shikbe, Shahi Gobe, be Womba Soli Shungla, Womba Soli Shungla Gaba He Song De, Shungla Hewa, Kang De Ju Nugutabu Teo, Mahumpa, Juya Jamashung He, Mahung Look Chevara Shikde, Juya Jam Hebe, Rang Kang Shudi Jebe, Ju Misiba, Nangata Rimora Soba. Soba Judging. Should Geshe Gyeltsen, Gemazoe, the Regime Shad Mahumbar, Jobatendo, Tadane, Roni Manga, Konaimbi, Zoza, Sheni Tadale, tell Hibata Majime Shani, Zogobi, Pebaino, Wonja, Tusum, Jobayang, in Deva the Mahumba, to the Heba. Shemataba Konula, Tadawa, no, Jela Shebe, Mahumba Jevata, Mangaba Shebe, Deva Jeves, Chu Gobes, Deva do Gober, then Tina two county Georgians, two here doing Jogos, so to zoom there, and Deva did, because Deva did. Tata the Mountain showers. Mahoma the Devas Tata showers. The two songs with the Piduton show remote Jilani, because the Rahin to your Majesty said that.
I think Geshe read a lot. Actually, I lost track of things since Geshe was saying I couldn't find here. So, anyway, so let me translate what Geshe explained. So, I think he read page 187 and then keep going. So, according to Prasangika Madhyamika schools, all the three times, past, present, future, are entities, right? Because according to Savatandika Madhyamika and other schools, past and future are permanent realities, not entities, so that's a big difference there. And as Geshe explained, that the three times are interrelated, according to Prasangika, that when we talk about a past, that's contingent upon the present and the future. When we talk about the future, that's contingent upon the past and the present, right? So nothing exists intrinsically in and of itself. There is no intrinsicness, right, in the time concept. Kundalini mix, we call it non-verbal communication. Kundalini mix has no intrinsic reality there. Yeah.
Nugu Shikbata would say, Deva Yinjang, Nugu Deva, Nugu Shikbata would Nugu Shikba, Nugu Deva Yinjang, Nugu Tusu, Nugu La Tede, Mongoma Yinde. Then you go Ribu Bichelda, then Shindu, Nugu Mahoba Tada, but Nugu Mahoba Yinjang, Nugu Tus, so Nugula Deva Yinde, the Nugu Jui Bichero City, that Nugu Mahoba said, Mahoba Juru Shawara, there was the Jewish get Sayal Shawara, but she showed the Shodaka Doris.
Okay, so we are on page 187 and the third paragraph from the top, where the paragraph starts with a sprout's disintegration, for instance, is the past of the sprout. Yet in relation to the sprout, at the time of the sprout, it is the future because it's the sprout's effect and so forth. So that's where Geshe read, and as Geshe explained, that if we use a sprout as a case in point, as an example, illustrative case example, then the sprout has different aspects, isn't it? It has an aspect that has already ceased to exist. So that is the past of a sprout. And it has a present aspect because it has arisen and not yet ceased to exist, right? And then there are other future moments of a sprout not yet arisen. So this is how, in relation to a particular entity like a sprout, we can talk about its past, present, and future. So we will stop there today, and we will welcome questions. We'll first go to our Dharma friends on the cyberspace, and we don't have. Then I think we can use it here. Would you like to open the glass panel? Yeah.
Thank you, Geshe, for your teachings. I'm wondering about if we think of the sprout's causation as a sprout as being all the things that brought it together, the water, the sun, the seed, then the disintegration of the sprout could be a, like there's not enough water and so it goes back into its parts, goes back into the soil. Would the disintegration of the sprout also be when it turns into a sapling or I guess I'm thinking about it negatively, like a pot breaks. But what if I reuse the pot for something else? Or like for a sprout, when a sprout becomes a sapling or a flower or whatever it's going to become, is that also a disintegration of the sprout because it's now, its parts are now something else?
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Is that right?
So you're checking a bit. Right?
Yeah, is that true? Could it be becoming something positive, like becoming its thing that we would think that it needs to become, a flower? Is the disintegration just the changing of its existence at that moment?
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Moran kani shwe de dirgen de tring thongma sungje nang bad kani chi shuro che sa gen che de ga ta tanda nganzo nyugul ya de mang thusum sha rwa gen ta quran ge shikba de sam tang de tang ge sa nganzo dan de shikba de menga re shikshe de go rwa gen shikba menga re tene kho kharsa mainga re che de go rwa ta di je de nganzo kharsa or da gangzo ne she de rwa gen 다 룹존에 삼다원에 시과세 딘데 삼단데 거서 베나다 가서 우리 장바를 비치에베나 로바게 다 장바데 쇼르체는 고 메도께 두고 와게 메도께 되고라 다고 장바데 시고 와게 얘네고 야 메도께 두다 뭐라 룹존을 삼단데 와게 룹존을 삼단데 와 야가 차를 와게 저도 디 가서 거다 다 시과세데 야가 차든데 삼단 전에 디거로 해서 거지 이제 맹가 많이 비치로 와게 근데 장바를 지연하게 장바코 유로 두고 와게 다코 코라 기지 유바데데 코 가로 메도 차고 신동 차고고 야가 삼문 차고 와게 저도 그 유바 태샤바 디게디 라샤네게 근데 시과체 연면아
어디서 답지 시과다 데모다 겐데 강가야로 그 제가 주여자 마제바 제시마제 네 뭐지 가서 투송 유효라
그래
그래 강가래 투송 가서 시과다 데모서 강가 뭐 강가 유효가리디
다단다게 이제 장바데 쇼르야 메도의 행동 차이의 마음보 사신 디거로 왔다 장바데 마음
행동은 메도는 들라 행동이나 깨심다
매매되게 장바 코라를 차시나 로와게 장바데게 마음바 디나를 로와게 장바데 행동 차오샤 행동 차는 메도 차 책으로 와게 이거 상바데 나도 용주선다 그 마음바 샤는 디거로 와게
네 다다 행동 사바리데 마음바데 시도
행동 차이 되게 거로
마음바 샤는 디거 다다 매세고 거야 사는 거로 와 들으라
So hopefully Geshe understood, but what the way Geshe explained is that when we think in terms of, let's say, sprout, right? The way it's explained here, the disintegration is the kind of final outcome effect, right? Something destroyed or ceases to exist, right? So the past of the sprout is no more existent, it's gone, right? It is absent, ceases to exist, right? Now, the future of the sprout can include many things, right? Many positive. That sprout, if let's say this sprout is going to become a tree one day, then it's going to grow flowers or going to grow fruit. So all of those not yet arisen could be the future of the sprout, right? We can consider that as. But the sprout itself, which is right now here, not yet cease to exist, right? Oh, it's very momentary. We have to think that. Until the next moment arises, it's the present of the sprout, right? Is that making a little clear for you? Because everything is momentary, right? And we can't think too long, right? Before the second moment arises, this moment is still there, So its present is that. As soon as the next moment arises, this ceases to exist, right? Now the future has come already. Are you with me? So it's kind of very subtle notion here we're dealing with. Right? Just my footnote, okay? I guess I didn't say that. My footnote. Yeah. Yeah, it's on.
So we heard about decay and disintegration. I think that question actually, the changing appearance of the sprout would fall in the category of decay, not disintegration.
Okay. Morang disagree benake jangba di ta ko yurugo rawage. Jangba di ta kichi yurugo rawage. De yurbe chadi shikbare jigbare skorta. Taking anje shikbare jigbe ke yawa che rawage. Cheta yurugo rawage. Jangba ko yurgo yezan de yurro de la shikba lago gore de jigba lago gore skorta.
तो जोर से आते थे तो महो बाल डोरवा हिवा रे मते जोर से तो महो को वो महो
Tanda mata yur de ken tanda yurwa di ko do simba de rawage. O di jigba ma de shikba ma rawage.
आते शिवा मारे
Di jigba lago rawage. Yeah, I think that would be part of the decay, not the disintegration. Yeah. The ongoing process, right? This change is a decaying, it's not a disintegration or shikpa, according in this context.
That's a
very
unfortunate term.
Right? Yeah, I know that term. Yeah, that's why I said. Yeah, I don't have a better one either, so I don't want to critique my colleague here because I don't have a better one. If I have, then I'm going to show it. But yeah.
I think it's probably just semantics, maybe. The idea of decay to means that the sprout would go back into the earth and not continue to grow. So I think that's where I'm confused. Does that make sense?
The sprout will do what?
So I guess when I think of decay,
Yes.
I would think of it as just going back into the earth, going back into
And
water,
then coming back again.
and then being gone, right? But if I'm thinking about it becoming a flower or
I
a
see.
tree,
That's what you think.
is it
Yes.
disintegration? And
Yeah.
maybe that's just too.
Sure. Yeah. I think normally that I might think too, right? But here, so I think the concept here, particular meanings are. Ala Quran ka mean do. Tanda nganje inji chek na liya jikpa senga yur wage. Digi kodne chik moral chedang samde yusra pena tanda nganzo nyugu de shena wage. Ta nyugu de kora chiju kanga sone shuma de nyugu de mewa cha sona ta ko sal yuru gore sra wage. Yang ko namshi jan ko yangjo san ya ke yong ne wage. Cheda moral sambala ya da jikpa se che wa. Nindel samla tang de wage. Nyugu de ma chin sal yur yang san yangjo ya ke yong wa. Nindel ko de do sa de.
뭐 희과 쓰듯이 지로 파 메가
Jikpa.
아니 지과서는
어디 말
다 지과서는 거라 제스가 지기 위험을 세우다 지다는 지과서 제라샤지 지과서는 지가 위험을 명성스러워서
알아놓으세요. So I think
지기
that
위험을 다 지과 근데 제가 좋아다 제스보다 이놈
알레시주요.
내셔버리셔
So Geshe says, yeah, maybe the way we talk about the Tibetan word jikpa, like, I mean, it can be translated destruction, then it will again throw you off. But here translated as decay, right, in this translator. So maybe we can think it in terms of the very nature of the entity that is in nature of decaying, isn't it? Right? So that as the very nature, we can talk about, again, maybe the past of decaying and the present of the decaying, perhaps, right, or the future, or something like that. With me. So it's the very nature of an entity that changes, isn't it? Right? So that we might think as a jikpa, that translates decay here. Okay. Hopefully that helps a little bit. I don't know. This is a so complicated concept, very hard to capture in English, and I don't know. Of course, I'm not the native, but even the native said decaying, so I said, okay, let's do decaying.
Earlier you said that it's not momentary impermanence. Actually, it's okay. It was said that earlier that decay doesn't refer to momentary impermanence.
Okay, yeah, I'll check with this.
Okay, but here it says specifically, for example, the definition of on the top of page 184, it says they accept. So this is what they're talking about. Decay. Decay is something that does not depend upon other causes that arise later. This is the definition of momentary impermanence.
Okay.
So decay actually is that.
Okay.
The changing appearance is an aspect of it.
Sure. Korangi kandi share this go again. Then the tagi ko ngal keje di ti song ga jikpa se choro wa. Jikpa se di ki keje la ken jikdwa choro wa. 다가나로 그거 여러 배서 와게
네,
네 이내 디디 가서 게라 매바로 와게 제도간 디다가 거디 거로 와 직바세 끼지끼지 주다가
지금까지도 그거 데모 가야 된거 말고 다 그런
끼지끼지 간도 간다 겐데로 밖에 미다바 참아도 된 거로 직바세
미다 강가사 깨지면 지바사 미다 강가리 지바스도 건 대와다 다사 깨자 가야 말 맹상 된 거라
알레 직바세 되기 미다바 차라니가 된 거로 와
미다바 다 강가 조수 미다바 지바스도 다 지기 여바다 지스보다 디노스 소문 거라
라루와 이내 디기 예바르도 미다바 참아 때문에 깨자 게마로 와 차
네
타보 때인데 여러 담제는
just
Just one, yeah. So the way we Geshe explains the word jigpa, decay, whatever, yes, that includes the momentary disintegration, but it is like basically the whole concept of impermanence. That's what it includes, right? The whole concept of impermanence is, yeah, right. In a quick cup, there is schedule gala king, so the midaba chamotendi goes, so with the page de yang shung jitsuku doage, because jigpa say the 치중의 교일때 요말에 로하게 그 규칙을 미다고 참어지고 고등에 스캅델라 미다고 참어라는 그거를 배.
미다 참어 가야 돼 말. 직바세는 명상 저기 이어봤다. 아니 제 힘보다 지금 저 강가를 다들 소소 마셔. 진짜 쉬워다.
So I think because Geshe close there, text I'm referring to the text, right? So we probably can resolve. But he said, the way Geshe explained it is just take it as a general concept of impermanence, not necessarily, we should include all kinds of impermanence, subtle and coarse, right? Not necessarily subtle in this context. He said it doesn't. Yeah.
Impermanence.
Right. So it's a
Definition that something does not depend on another cause for its disappearance, or the way it put, it does not depend upon other causes that arise later in order for it to disappear.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
What's the definition of subtle impermanence? That's the question.
Right. Purana deukana depeje shungsi jikzu roage. 치중 그 교라 때에 지금 많이 봐 거라고는 지금 라르와게 제대 디 거라사마 디 가서 미다바 참옥이 친이 샤고도 삼도 와게 디면은 미다바 참을 친이 가르샤고 해서 게라 치중 그 교라 때에 주로 많이 봐 와게 라브와 미다바 참을기
미다 참을서도 미다샤들 배 로던다와 깨바트레 샤요로
라레
저
라르와
다들 미다 도시 깨지기 지야도 도시 미다 도시 다 로드 깨바트레 샤보지서 지저데 또 미다 도시 버와
알게지 주다마데 깨지 주드와디 가서 줄때니 깨지 주드와다 치중기 줄 마데바 디레게 삼고고야 말와
디레 가 말이
Geshe said, the subtle impermanence, right, that we talk about is that, of course, we know the concept of impermanence is very broad, right? It includes, things that might happen in many eons, a long time, whatever. But if you understand how everything is changing, right, moment to moment, right? So that's the definition of subtle impermanence, It doesn't have to be like, well, it does not depend on the later cause arising, anything like that. It's something that changes moment to moment, right? If you realize that, so that is the understanding of subtle impermanence. Yeah. Yes.
I think I kind of found the answer to my question in the text. Yeah.
Good.
On page 187, the paragraph sprouts disintegration.
Wait a minute. 187.
So it's 2 paragraphs down.
Okay.
And it says, one might say, at the time of a sprout's disintegration, for instance, it has arisen and has not ceased, so it is present. So I think the way that answers my question is,
Oh, you're right, yeah.
the sprout is still, like if it becomes a flower, it's still within the flower, even though the things that caused it to come together to be called a sprout are no longer present.
Right.
That's
right. When the cause is seed, then the fruit will come up, right?
Yeah.
Fruits, right.
Yeah, so I think that makes
Okay. Yeah,
Does
that
that-
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Quick one. So I think overall what they're saying, I think that, let's see if we can synthesize this. The opponents are saying disintegration or the end of something is permanent because it happened, it's not going to change. That's what. And then Prasangaka goes, yes, it happened, it's not going to change, but it was caused. So because it has a cause, we're calling it impermanent. This is just
We're
of
calling
everything.
it the entity. Yeah.
Yeah, bottom. Well, it's caused. It has a cause
Yeah.
and effect. So it's also impermanent, even though it's going to continue not existing.
Right.
It has a continuum of non-existence, but it's still impermanent.
Right. One
think
existence
that's-
ceases, but another existence might continue. Right.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of it, right?
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. That's what I can tell. Yeah. That's right. Sure. Marang this go la jo de ring songjo ge da ning de ro chik de ro wa ge karsa go re da ge shigba ro wa ge shigba second ding over ka san ko ju che ba res la ro wa ge pena da nyugo ro cha cha na nyugo shigba di ngobo res ko ju che ba res wa ge da nyugo de da ko shig sa ro wa ine go re shigba khora ki tanda de na ma ke karsa go re da ya ju che ne shamba ti sig ro wa ge mo tin te ro wa shigba khora ge shigba khora ge ya che shamba ge ju che cho go re cho ma
어, 진짜
Chechogoro again. What Chechogoro again? Yeah, so what Geshe says this,
희바
right?
희바 방주어로
Right. So there could be many other disintegratedness following it. Exactly. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Rosala? No. Okay. One more question somewhere we can do. Right. Yeah.
Can we call the disintegration cessation? Isn't it? Why not cessation? Just cessation. Disintegration is the same as cessation. Why not use the word cessation?
Okay.
The ceasing of something.
Right. I'll check. Yeah. There's a word for cessation in Tibetan, so I have to check with it. Right.
Yeah, there's a different word for cessation.
Yeah.
Really?
Right, that's why I said. In English sounds like same about. Then there's another word for cessation. That's right. Quran this something. I just shikwa la de ko ko chago ro age. And gagbas la bisena ko meba cha de ga ro ro age. Chikwa marbe sa nge da yang anzo gagba le de yang ko thanye kha ga se la in ba ge. Ta gen gi gagbas la cho ro age. Gagbas se da shikwa se ni de tonda chikwa re mare de di yawa che na ma do ge.
알레 가세는 투성조리
La.
가 켐바 가바 조
No.
아니
Ta bena ge chikwa la ba ni la tonda
시바세는 시스보다 시바 조아다 시바 구세한테 디레 그지 샤기 메제
la.
시바 조아다
아 shikwa khoran ju sum cha yo ma.
시바 코란도 이거는 시바 코란 뭐냐 영제 시바 디레 샤자에 그러와 이제다는 시바 조아다 아니 시바 조아다 투성 시바 코란 투성 가이블데 샤고 말와
Chidang shikwa la ina ge ma da ge tanda pena nyugu shikwa la ba da nyugu ga ba la ba nye ba de tanda shikwa ma ra so da la
가자 뒤에 가바스 두 탐제 도어와 시바스는 내가 뭐 정말 식사 주고
ale gu ga ba ale the one way is to differentiate between the Tibetan word for cessation is gagpa and for the shikwa is disintegration we just said, right? He said disintegration, it implies the past is gone, right? It doesn't imply the future. Whereas the cessation, at least in the Tibetan word, we can talk about, right? Something ceased already. Something is ceasing. Something will cease, right? So we can talk about it 3 times in terms of the cessation. Whereas disintegratedness, in general concept, we can talk about it 3 times. It is something already done, So that's one way he differentiates. Yeah, good. Okay, I think they have some other event there, so if you don't mind, we have a lot of prayer requests. We will do that. Where is that? And then I have more on my Vici thing here. Suppose. Okay, bear with me. There's my next duty. Again, tung me jam ju shue na de yo ba. De ge shu so chna. Das tunda shuma de sa dawa ta lak pa ni ge zan de me sa. Ki shi lak. De ne chele de ba jina bui sing de dang gong chong de wa ge. Ane dan dang ju pem gi shimi miramar 32 le me ba cha do ma. Tom Rubier second the Chinta Chibetari Isagula Mebashash again. The net set a Demba, John Trin second tak Kaso Tengi Tanda Tong Wisarova. But Goodrich second data Mengang Nidika led it one. Mark Beatty second the any youngs Mengang road to Wisarova again. Janet Dine Karsogore Kim Carter second the Ook Kangeki dos again. They get to make them Junaronas. Janet did maybe get to make them just share data to get the Pejamit to get the Sunday Mero, shifts and get some chasha. Hong Kim Ching Sarwa, K. Luz, Trenty Nguyen, Nguyen T. K. Hong Kim Tang Sarwa, B. Ne, Hong Kim Dong Sarwa, Hong Kim Song, Hong Kim Doi, they get the two majors on us. So I have first announcement from Geshe Haramba Kuncho Versal that next week, Monday and Wednesday classes are cancelled. My understanding is out of town. So next week, Monday and Wednesday classes are cancelled. And then prayer requests for deceased are Gina Bui passed away last night. And Pam's cat Miramar passed away on May 6th. And then Tom Rubio passed on April 29th. And then those who are living for healing, John Trin is actually dying from cancer. Bud Goodrich is bedridden in the hospital facility. Mark Beatty is frequently end up in hospital, so pray for. And Kim Carter has breathing issues and in hospital. And then I have more prayer requests for Hong Kim Ching, K. Lui, Chen Ti Nguyen, Nguyen Ti K, Hong Kim Tang, B. Ne, Hong Kim Dong, Hong Kim Song, Hong Kim Doi. Okay. So we will do the Avalokiteshvara Buddha of Compassion prayer and dedication for the deceased, followed by healing Buddha prayer and dedication for the living. Chadong Golun Juve, Jabo Don, Jendong, Kiawa Sangbu, Sangye Dong, Kangla Kangdu, Tela Teto, Jumba Jende Sela, Chanze de Omani Peme, Home Money. Omani Beme Hori, Gawa Di, Yododa, Jere Sevan, Rujune, Dova Chiyam, De Salam, Barasho, Toje Gunla, Yombe, Jomden, Senzan, Febe, Nindu, Dunese, Duzon, Neses, Bindu Yaye, Chaze Lo Namon Bagaba, the Begaze Guru Bendo, Yatabaranza, Yatanagada, Arahade, Samya Sambuddha, Theata, Begaze, Ma, Begaze, Bel, Ranza Samogade, so Theata, Begaze, Ma, Begaze. Te dam be ga ze ma be ga ze ran ze sam ga de so wa ge wa de nyu do da men be ge won do ju ne do wa ji ja. The Salam Guru Show prayer booklet, page 3. Lord Jazu, Udon Bega de Kiasam Pumbe, Chudum, Mimba Shin, Temba Zinla, Wando Jichu, Tanyan Jugun Jola, so one de page 5. Mawang Dame Gunjan Donga Den, Kari Jonso, Ninda Senza, Jamgan Yawa, Niwa Yapse, Tangzon Dinzi, Mawe, Shiba Zu, Tenzin Chebe, Kimbo Zebe, Sheje Nigun Changzhou, Tendu, Longdo Tamju, Bebe, Peyu, Duja Yazu, Gundo, Shabden Sho, Tezan Gondan, Chezu, Zombe, Yonzo, Yure, Tobe, Nyagi, Longri, Dejen, Nebe, Bendenba, Tubden, Kanri, Dabo, Shat, Dona Gongmen, Zeba, Namda, Gwen, Dendan, Robe, Pende, Jobe, Shen, Lendo, Jumi, Chebe, Tende, Gezan, Duje, Dendo, Shabden Sho, Chizu, Lamen, Togye, Melamda, Gezan, Duje, Dendan, Chozon, Dodo, Jedon, Domba, Jida, Membe, Dungu, Lendo, Sho, page 9. Ranjan Jingen, Gombo, Zeba, Men, Zodo, Namje, Keyun, Drama, Sho, Zozo, Seye, Lazo, Tamje, Tanden, Mishe, Joge, Modo, Zo, Tuden, Jela, Losan, Yawa, Shiro, Demban, Zembe, Benyue, Tade, Duja, Yongwe, Shenye, Yangdu, Ninje, Wongbo, Sowa, De, Jiden, Songwe, Chana, Beme, Tembe, Zawa, Soso, Taba, Ye, Namda, Sudin, Yangda, Lamba, Losan, Jenden, Bedo, Shabden, Sho, Tujun, Yajin, Nonzin, Yangbe, Shin, Samjo, Namje, Sangzin, Jumbe, Gomjo, Shin, La, Zongjo, Debe, De, Tembe, Ngada, Chenbo, Shabden, Chebe, Dongan, Gowa, Bojo, De, Zembe, Lilan, Siyu, Bunda, Zembe, Dende, Leshe, Zhang, Kiru, Shenye, Chenbo, Shabden, Sho, Kebe, Langdo, Kushi, Zeda, Zembe, Chara, Niezo, Rasa, Sangbe, Duje, Rigun, Yishe, Wong, Sumde, Shenye, Chenbo, Shabden, Tezan, Rola, Jube, Dende, Je, Menjo, Tajue, Zangme, Siji, Lajin, Zidin, Dende, Besha, Chenpo, Shabden, Sho, Jozon, Yawa, Seje, Chenla, Da, Tuden, Tamje, Songme, Sonamje, Daja, Masan, Dabe, Chida, Membe, Dungu, Lundo, Sho, Changjo, Simjo, Rinpo, Che, Maje, Bana, Yeju, Yewa, Nyangba, Meba, Gone, Gondo, Pewa, Sho, Dongni, Dawa, Rinpo, Che, Maje, Bana, Yeju, Yewa, Nyangba, Gone, Gondo, Pewa, Sho, Sa, Shi, Beje, Joshi, Medo, Zhang, Rira, Linshi, Ninde, Genba, Sanje, Shindo, Mede, Viva, Duwen, Nanda, Jinla, Juba, Sho, Kari, Rabe, Gorbe, Shingam, So, Bendan, Tewa, Man, Jere, Zewan, Tenzin, Yanzo, Ye, Shabe, Siden, Bando, Tenju, Je, Yedang, Guru, Rana, Mande, Niyanda, Yamin, Yawa, Gundo, Yangda, Lama, Dan, Reme, Sheje, Bela, Lonje, Sada, Lamje, Yunden, Rabzo, Nen, Doje, Changi, Goba, Nyudo, Sho. So according to Tibetan lunar calendar, today begins the Vesak month, Sagadava. So happy Sagadava, and I have a lot of wonderful practices. I mean, a footnote, usually even I translate the Jigba and both as disintegration, and I thought maybe in English might work like disintegration, disintegratedness, at least they're different, instead of like decaying and all of those, but anyway, that's just my footnote there, yeah.